Right. So, cost, volume, profit decision, short-term decision making, contribution. I'm sure you're happy with that. Is very much a case of selling price minus the variable cost. Our focus is very much on just what's going on before we start talking about fixed costs. And so, the break-even point. This is just one of the definitions, of course, where we are at a point where we're just making enough units to cover we're just selling enough units to cover our fixed costs, and so therefore at this point there are no profits, there are no losses, and the margin of safety is the relationship between our, if you like, actual sales, or I suppose budgeted sales, and our break-even sales. So if you're looking at a sort of graph here, or the break-even chart, this is units, of course. This is either your budgeted or actual compared to what your break-even is. That gives you a sense of safety, so to speak. Um, and that's what happens with, and that's question 56. And that's how you do that one. Okay, let's work through 57. We've been playing around with this sort of thing for some time now. Let's look, you have some information and you're told to calculate the actual budgeted fixed overheads, or sorry, forgive me, calculate the budgeted fixed overheads for this product MR13. Now here's the thing, you know what the overhead is per unit. You know it's £7.20. The reason why it's £7.20 is that what happened was there was a total amount and you spread that amount over the budgeted volume to get £7.20, right? That's how we get there. That's how we get this budgeted figure that we're going to be putting in. Whether or not it is what happens in the end is a very different story. So the question here is, we have this figure, spread that over 9,000 units, and we have £7.20. So I suppose if you're looking for this figure of X, that becomes £7.20 times 9 times 9,000. And so that's £7.20 times 9,000, which is 64,000, 64,800. So what do we have? So we have the very first one here as 64,800. The next question wants us to look at break even. Break even. And if you again consider break even is the relationship between the selling price and your variable cost. So let's look at that notion of, so we have £41.40 minus the variable costs of £27. That's your contribution per unit. Yes. So let's do that very quickly. So we have £41.40 minus £27, and that is £14.40. Yes. So you have a contribution per unit of £14.40. You have a fixed cost given to us here that we've just calculated, right, of 64,800. So this is our budgeted, these are our fixed costs that we're trying to cover. So we now have, in effect, 64,800 divided by the £14.40. Yes, 64,800 divided by £14.40, which is equal to 4,500 units. Yes, so 4,500 units is the is what we're dealing with here. Right, good. So it says that the plan is to sell 9,000 units. And so, well, that seems to be the case here. So if you're planning to sell 9,000 units, well, again, like I said, you can fall. The question is, by how many units can you fall before you hit the break even? And so that must be, of course, 9,000 minus the 4,500, which of course is 4,500. So the margin of safety is 4,500 units. Now remember, you're falling from the original point. You're falling from the selling point in terms of how many units you intend to sell. And so therefore your margin of safety is therefore 4,500 divided by 9,000, because that's where you're falling from. The margin of safety is always based from the point of sale, right? So you have the 4,500, and that gives you a 50% margin of safety, the percent margin of safety. Right, and so what are we saying here? That if you increase the selling price by £1.80, so the selling price is currently, let's see, the selling price is currently £41.40, and your costs are £27. So if you increase this by £1.80, we're looking at £43.20, right? So the point here is that we will hit break even sooner, so to speak. So the break even point will decrease. So these two are correct in their initial argument. But because the break even point we will get there sooner, and if you're still going to be selling 9,000, so I mean, if break even then becomes 4,300, well, the margin of safety has increased. So the margin of safety, the distance between that 9,000 and the 4,300, for example, as opposed to the current 4,500, is larger. And so in effect, margin of safety will increase in that regard. Okay, so I've highlighted severally in class that when we talk about target profit, we are really just talking about an additional fixed cost, right? So your current situation is that you have to cover a fixed cost of 64,800. This is currently the situation, 64,800. Now you want to make an additional profit of 36,000, and your um, contribution, which we calculated earlier on, somewhere in the corner, is £14.40, isn't it? So that's your contribution, £14.40. So in effect, what are we saying here? £14.40, £14.40. That's what we're saying. So after covering fixed costs, you now also have to cover, if you like, this target profit, right? So in effect, you could just add the two of them, these two things, and divide them by the £14.40, and you will have the number of units that need to be sold in order to cover that. So if we do that very quickly, we have 64,800 plus 36,000 divided by £14.40, 7,000 units. So currently our aim is to sell 9,000 units, which means that our margin of safety, we can fall by 2,000 units. We can fall by 2,000 units before we hit this new supposed target profit. And therefore the revised, sorry, as a percentage, of course, this is 2,000 over 9,000, right? Of course, times 100%, because this wants it as a percentage, not as units. So 2,000 times, so 2,000 divided by 9,000, and that's 20. Oh, actually, my calculator is rather. I know that 2 over 9, with 2 divided by 9 times 100. Yeah, 22.2%. I get 22.2%. And then margin of safety and revenue, well, that's really saying take the 2,000 at the new selling price. I'm sorry, at the selling price, which of course he says everything remains as per budget, of course, at the selling price that we're currently doing, which is 41 pound 40. Yes, I believe so. It is 41 pounds and 40. Here we are, selling price of 41 pound and 40 at 41 pound 40. 2,000 times 41 pounds and 40, and we have 82,800, right? And that's where we are with this question. So the key point here is that just treat this new situation carefully, to treat the target profit as a fixed cost, as though you were covering any other fixed cost. So it's the same principle. How many units do we need to sell? How many contribution do we need, so to speak, to cover this target profit? And we get that. And then you now compare your where your current budget sales budget is of 9,000 to the new expected target profit of 7,000 units, and then take that as a percentage of the 9,000, and then you're there. Okay, great stuff. And that is question 57. That is question 57. Right, with question 58, some great questions here. We are selling seafood in a can at 80p per can, marginal cost of production 30p per can, and therefore the contribution per can is 50p. So we have a fixed cost. Well, I suppose you could call this, yeah, this 50p, and your fixed costs to do with this situation, you have to cover 312. The question is asking you calculate the sales revenue required to achieve this break even. Well, fundamentally, the question here is, well, how many units do we need if you like to break even? So if you want to think about it that way. And to break even, you need 312,500 divided by 50p, right? And that's 312,500 divided by 0.5. So you need 625,000 units. And of course, multiply that by the selling price of 80p, 80 pence, times 0.8. That's £500,000. And that's how we get the sales revenue. So I think the best thing to do is to find your break-even units. Find your break-even units, and you're there. Because when you find your break-even units, those are the number of units you need to sell. So just multiply that by the selling price. This is an interesting question here. The sales revenue needed to make a profit of 200,000. I think what's always important to understand is that at break even, for example, contribution, I said this a lot in class, that a break-even contribution is equal to fixed costs. That's the first thing I wanted to highlight. I also said that you can find a relationship between the contribution and the sales. There is a relationship because these are both variable, contribution and sales are. So you can see the relationship between contribution and sales is 50 over 80. I mean, when I say it's 50p over 80, so you can find that as a percentage, right? You can say, yes, 5 divided by 8 is equal to 0.66. So contribution to sales ratio is 62.5%. You know that contribution is always 62.5% of sales. Anyway, here we are. So we know that at break-even, contribution is equal to fixed costs. So if I want to make a profit of 200,000, and I know that my fixed cost is 312,500, and I want a profit of 200,000, it means my contribution must be, therefore, 512,500, right? It just must be, because there's no way you're going to make a profit of 200,000. So this has to be your contribution. So now that you know your contribution being 512,500, you know that's your contribution, and you know that contribution is 62.5% of sales. All I now need to do is just divide this by that 0.625, and I will find what the sales are at that 0.625, and that's 820,000. It's 820,000, right? And that's what your sales are if you want to hit that profit. But the first point is you have to kind of go backwards. Go back and find the contribution first. Thank you very much. And then look at that relationship between contribution and sales. It's always a constant relationship, right? It doesn't change, right? I suppose you could look at this. If you can look at margin of safety in terms of monetary amounts. Your plan is to sell 875. This is if they were to sell, what would be the over the break even? What would be the so this is just B. I'm going to question ignoring target profit. It just says I'm going to work with the original break even, right? Because that's what it feels like. So if you were to sell 875, what would the margin of safety be? Well, given that this is 500,000, well, the margin of safety would be 875,000 minus 500,000, right? Which would be 375,000. That would be the margin of safety, the difference between what your planned sale is and what break even is. And therefore the margin of safety percentage over the break even sales is really saying again, find that margin of safety 375,000 divided by what we were planning to sell it for, right? We're always working back from the budgeted sales to break even. We're saying by how much would something fall from sales to break even, right? That's what we're saying. So it's as a percentage of the selling. And I talked about this in class. So you can do that. So 375,000 divided by 875,000 times 100. It's not the prettiest of answers, actually. I have 42.85. I can look at that later. But I don't think this question was in relation to part B. It doesn't feel right. They should have given some more information. It looks in relation to um, break-even sales. Okay, great stuff. And that is question 58. Let's look at 59 and see if it's similar to the others. That looks exactly like, doesn't it? Let's just see. That looks exactly like. Oh no, it doesn't. It's new, right? So we'll do that question. We'll do that question as well. Yeah, we'll do this question. We'll do question 59 um, as well. Okay, let's do question 59 and let's just run through this step by step. So we're talking about two products A and B. These are the units that are sold and made and sold. Let's look at product A, selling price per unit. So we have the sales revenue given to us here, and these are the units that are made and sold. So we can find the selling price per unit by literally dividing this revenue by this, can't we? So you now have, in the beginning, you have 450,000 divided by the 300,000, which is £1.50. So we have £1.50 being the selling price there. And here we have the 600,000 divided by the 500,000. Of course, we have the 600,000 divided by the 500,000, which is of course equal to £1.20. £1.20. £1.20. Yes. So that's what we have. That's what we have. Let me just get rid of that. Okay, great stuff. Then what do we have next? What do we have next? So we have the materials. Let's look at materials. In terms of materials, we're spent £60,000 on, these are the units that are sold. So 60,000 divided by the 300,000, which is 20p. Yeah, so that's 20p. And that's a 60,000. And then we have the 36,000 divided by the 300,000, which is 12p. And of course we have the variable overhead, which is 45,000 divided by the 300,000, which is 15p. Yes, so we have that all done and sorted by the units. And we literally repeat the same thing, and let's do that. So in terms of materials, we have the 125,000 divided by the 500,000. 125,000, 125,000 divided by the 500,000, which is which is 25p. And then we have labor, of course, which is 70,000 divided by the 500,000. 70,000 divided by the 500,000, which is 14p. And here we have the variable overhead, which is 95,000 divided by the 500 divided by the 500,000, which is 19p. Which is 19p. And so you now have a contribution per unit, of course, which is the £1.50 less the £0.20 minus the £0.12 minus the £0.15, which leaves us with £1.03. Yes, and we do the same thing here. We have £1.20 minus the £0.25 minus the £0.14 minus the £0.19, which of course is 0.62. So in terms of volume, let's look at the volume involved here. The volume is that we have 300,000 and 500,000. Yes, we have 300,000 and 500,000. 300,000 and 500,000. And so let's find the total contribution, of course. So 300,000 times £1.03. So that's 309. Just change my pen color. 309,000. And here we have 500,000 times 62p, which is 310,000. Right, so we can find the total of that plus 309,000. That's 619,000. Right. We now have fixed costs that are 264,020. Those are given to us, 264,020. And therefore, our profit would be 619,000 minus 264,020, which is 354,908. Right? And that's your budgeted profit for the year. So what we're now doing is extending these arguments a little. So we have £1.03 and 62p. I'll just write those in here very quickly. £1.03 and 62p. £1.03 and 62p. So we're told that here you have fixed costs of 158,620, and here you have fixed costs of £105,400. So we now know what the fixed costs are. We know what we need to break even, which is literally just the fixed cost divided by the unit contribution. So breaking even for A is 158,620 divided by £1.03, which is 154,000 units to break even. And here we have 105,400 divided by 0.62, which is 170,000 units to break even. The question then tells us we can now come up here and find the forecast sales. Forecast sales are, you see me looking for them. Here it is. The latest sales forecasts are 250,000. So this is the latest sales forecast. 250,000 units of A and 400,000 units of B. Okay, great. So then they ask us margin of safety, which is the difference, literally. Let's change my red pen to red color. The difference between, of course, forecast and break even, of course, and therefore you will have 250 minus the 154, which is 96. So your margin of safety is 96,000 here. And your margin of safety here, 400 minus 170 is 230,000. And your margin of safety, of course, is 96,000 over the forecast of 250 times 100%. And here we have 230 over 400 times 100%. So let's just do that very quickly. 96 divided by 250 times 100 is 38.4%. I'll just take this out and write that in. 38.4%. And here we have 230 divided by 400 times 100, which is 57.5%. 57.5%. And so, of course, the product with the safer margin of safety is the one with the higher margin of safety, of course, and therefore that is product B, the one with the higher distance away from its break even. Cool, great stuff. And that is question 59. Let's look at question 60. Yeah, I can't see. Again, yeah, we'll just do these, but they're all expressions of that. So we will do question 60 as well, as it seems that is a clear, a different expression of what we're talking about. Okay, let's make this the last question in this series. We're still doing short-term decision making, but we've recorded quite a number of heavy videos here. So ECB, 3 forecasts to be driven, of these miles to be driven. In a way, it's almost like a flexible budget, isn't it? sorry, a flexible budget where we're just looking at what the different scenarios are for the different outputs. So we have 10,000, 12, and 14. So that's your revenue there for 100,000 over. So that's, yes, I'm sure you accept that must be £10 a mile. If I multiply that, first of all, I mean, it's all variable, isn't it? That must be that, and that must be 140 there as well. And if I look here at fuel, these are all variables, so £8,000 over 10,000 miles will leave this at ATP, won't it? If I multiply that ATP, because the 8,000 divided by the 10,000 gives us ATP. The only thing is that the ATP times the 12 grand times the 12,000 is 9,600, yes? And then the ATP times the 14,000 is 11,200. When you look at the wages, that's £5,000 being spread over 10,000 miles. That's 50p, isn't it? 50p. And so you, in a way, you can say 50p times the 12,000, which is a nice half, isn't it? By now, hopefully, you're used to all of this. And you have 50p times the 14,000, which is 7,000. And then when you look at the overheads, which are variable as well, you have the 6,000 over the 10,000, which is 60p. So 60p times the 12,000 is 7,200. And 60p times 14,000 is 8,400. So we know these are fixed. They tell us 10,600. Nothing's changing there. And we have overheads that seem fixed as well, according to the argument. And that's good. So we can find what the total cost is by adding all of this together. So let's just do that. I think we'll just do this. We'll do all of them, shan't we? 9,600 plus 6,000 plus 7,200 plus 10,600 plus 25,850, which is 59,250. Let's just do the same thing here. 11,200 plus 7,000 plus 8,400 plus 10,600 plus 25,850. 63,050. So profit, if you like, let's just deduct this, of course, from the figure here. So let's do, doesn't really matter which one we do first. Let's take this away from the 140,000, and that's 76,950. And we do exactly the same thing here. 120,000 minus the 59,250 is 60,750. So now we have the profit, so we can now find the profit per mile. So this is a 6750 divided by 12, and then this divided by 14. Yes, and let's do that here. 60,750 divided by the 12,000, which is £5 and 6, £5 and 6, 625. And then if we do the same thing, we have 76,950 divided by the 14,000, which takes us to 5.496. Right, and that's sort of the first part that we're looking at, and we've done that. Then we want to do a bit more work here. What is here we have the, so we're extending this argument a little to just really apply, and we've done all this before, haven't we? But let's just do it. So for the 12,000 miles, let's look at what we have here. Your revenue is 120,000, and here your revenue is 140,000. But there seems to be a focus on the 12,000 miles. You have fixed costs total fixed cost of these two things, yes? Of those two, those are your fixed costs. And so your fixed costs are the 10,600 plus the 10,600 plus the 25,850. Yes, and that gives you 36,450. 36,450. 36,450. Then you have a contribution. What the contribution was here, the contribution, we didn't calculate that. So the contribution was the 120,000 minus all of this, wasn't it? Yes. So the contribution was the 120,000 minus all the variable costs, which were 9,600 minus the 6,000 minus the 7,200, which is 97,200. So we have a contribution of 97,200, and we have 12,000 miles. So sorry, we have 12,000 miles. So the contribution per mile, if you like, is the 97,200 divided by 12,000. Yes, 97,200. 97,200 divided by 12,000, which is £8.1. Yes, and that's what we have. So you're making £8.10 contribution on every mile, and you have to cover a fixed cost of 6,450. So the break-even number of miles will be the 36,450 divided by 8.1. Divide those two, and you get 4,500 miles. Right, 4,500 miles. And in pounds sterling, the break-even revenue, the revenue at this point, must be this times what the price is. I think it's £10, isn't it? I think we're selling at £10 a mile. It is £10. So multiply that by 10. And so we have therefore 45000. So 45,000. Now, so your break-even is 45,000 miles. Sorry, your break-even revenue is 45,000. Your break-even number of miles is 4,500. Your forecast number of miles is 12,000. So your margin of safety, of course, is the 12,000. I'm just going to stick with this cube. Is the 12,000 minus the 4,500, isn't it? Because it's the difference between the two. The forecast is 12,000. The forecast is 12,000, but the break-even is 4,500. And therefore, your margin of safety becomes 7,500 miles. Your break and your margin of safety 7,500 miles. And in revenue, of course, this is again multiplying this by 10, and that's £75,000. And then the margin of safety, percentage, of course, is the 7,500 divided by the 12,000. That's important, right? It's about that point of where it's coming from. It's the 7,500 divided by the 12,000, which is of course equal to 62.5%. And we do exactly the same play with, I suppose we can do that now as well. If this was in this scenario here with this one, we're literally just adding on another 2, so that's 9,500, isn't it? And that's 95,000, and therefore you have 9,500 divided by 14,000, so 9,500 divided by 14,000, which is of course 67.8. 67.8. Yeah, great stuff. And that's how we deal with this question. So there's a number of applications of this, and we'll cover the next set of questions in the next set of videos.